And the card attached would say, thank you for being a friend. Ba, ba, da, 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 dum.
But the fact that whoever sings that always goes to the bridge with the music, like, forget the words.
That horn section is
right. It's like, come on, come through.
Boss. All right, y'all, what's up? Welcome back for another episode of the Baltimore Bureau podcast. I'm Eze Jackson here with Khalilah Harris.
What's up? I'm not Dr. Khalilah Harris this week.
Dr.
Esquire.
Dr. Khalilah M. Harris, Esquire.
Okay, middle initial is right.
I slipped up this morning. But yes, we're here. And we have some stories to talk to you about this week.
All right. So, first of all, happy Artscape weekend.
It's Artscape weekend here in Baltimore. It is my favorite weekend of the year.
Yep.
If you know me, you know that this is my Christmas, my New Year's, my whatever holiday you like the most. Artscape weekend is that for me.
Word.
So I'm excited. I'm wearing my Raggedy Oreo shirt because it's indicative of where the Oreos right now are. Right now, there's a lot of holes. We're all torn up. But
fashionably favorite.
Yeah. But I still got faith. We'll get there. We'll get it together.
They're letting people go and whatnot.
Yeah.
Trading.
Machado's gone. I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do.
I think Adam is going to be gone too, but we'll see.
Yep.
Anyway, so Tracy Beal from the Real News team is out there at Artscape sharing some of her art. So
yes.
It's going to be a great weekend for Baltimore and the Real News team.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
I'm doing something every day down there, and I don't know. It's just a great time. The whole city comes out and celebrates Baltimore's art community. I'm really excited about it.
Yep. And people should look forward to some reporting from Eze next week about some of the, community-centric pieces of Artscape and
I'm going to be talking to Kevin Brown, who owns a restaurant called Station North Arts Cafe. Station North is the arts and entertainment district in Baltimore where a lot of Artscape stuff is going to be happening. But I'm also going to be talking to Lady Breon, who I've interviewed before and covered what she's doing, which is trying to create a black arts and entertainment district by reviving the historic Pennsylvania Avenue corridor. And some of you who are not from Baltimore may know Pennsylvania North Avenue. That was the corner where a lot of the protests and riots went on as far as Freddie Gray's death. Freddie Gray, who was killed by Baltimore City Police in 2015.
Yep. So look out for that. Love Lady Breon. She's a member of the first class of students in the school that I founded.
Oh,
so
yeah.
One of my babies. Dope sister.
Yeah.
All right. So moving right into this week, let's do a recap on some of the reporting we've done this week. First, we talked about immigration rights and advocacy related to ICE and, parents being separated from their children at the border. And Jessel Noor went out and talked to folk about their perspective on whether or not Larry Hogan or Ben Jealous would have their support in the coming election based on the policies that they've been putting forward. So let's get right into that.
Outrage against President Trump's immigration policies of separating families at the border have sparked protests across the nation. In Maryland, hundreds have taken to the streets in recent weeks to demand families be reunited. The daughter of undocumented immigrant Marta Rodriguez recently spoke at a rally against ICE in Baltimore this week.
They've told her that she has to leave from this country, that this is not her country, and it has been devastating news to all of us because no one deserves to be separated from anyone.
While immigration policy is largely under the purview of the federal government, if widespread protests motivate voters, they could help propel Democrats to gain seats in Congress and in state houses in the 2018 midterm election. In Maryland, Democratic nominee for governor Ben Jealous has been a vocal critic of Trump's immigration policies.
What's happening is outrageous. I tweeted out the other day, what Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions are doing on our border, it's not just anti-civil rights or anti-human rights. It's un-American. It's fundamentally un-American.
In a state where low voter turnout helped Larry Hogan become governor 4 years ago, he recalled Maryland's National Guard troops from the border in protest of Trump's policies of family separation.
Well, I thought it was the right thing to do. It just was a situation that was untenable and unacceptable, and I thought it was the right thing to do. I'm encouraged that there's some movement, but a lot more has to be done, and we got to see what happens in Washington. With this Congress, everybody's responsible for not coming up with any kind of a solution.
Governor Larry Hogan has come out against the policy of child separations. He says, he said that should not be happening. He says, he withdrew troops from the border. Will you be supporting Governor Hogan?
I will not be supporting Governor Hogan. Governor Hogan what he's doing is far too little, far too late, and I'm supporting Ben Jealous for governor because I believe that he would actually take real steps for families in this state.
Thus far, Larry Hogan has declined to give us an interview, but a spokesperson emphasized that Hogan himself is a husband of an immigrant, and he's the only Republican governor in the nation to remove National Guard troops from the border and to express his opposition to the administration's family separation policy. But leading immigrant rights groups like Casa de Maryland have backed Jealous, citing his work fighting for the passage of the Maryland Dream Act that allowed undocumented immigrants to receive in-state tuition at public colleges and universities.
He stood with us, he's marched with us, he's gotten arrested with us. Our people know him and our people trust him. So we know we need a governor who will stop the separations politics from children, from family members. And we know that Larry Hogan has volunteered us into many programs which continue to separate our families here in the state of Maryland. And we can't forget that as voters. We can't forget that if we're standing right now with children, if we're standing right now with families not being separated, if we're standing with the immigrant community, we should not be standing with Larry Hogan.
In an email, a Hogan spokesperson emphasized that he supports immigration policies that target criminals. But critics say such policies only serve to criminalize immigrant populations.
He says he's going after criminals.
Right. And I think that's a false line to draw. People are going to say, well, they're criminals because they crossed the border, or they're criminals because they have a record. We know that all these policies are structurally racist, and they're not for our safety.
Studies show that immigrant communities report fewer crimes when such policies are enacted. Foreign-born residents commit crimes at lower rates than those who are native-born. The Hogan administration also released a letter that addresses some of the over 60 undocumented youth being held in federal custody in Maryland, saying they believe they should be reunited with their parents as soon as possible. But critics say the state can do more.
The state and various counties have contracts with ICE. They can break those contracts. They can refuse to engage in those contracts until ICE lives up to certain basic humanitarian ways of treating people. So I don't buy it.
Many of the protesters have called for abolishing ICE, something neither Hogan or Jealous say they support. But they said Jealous would be more willing to listen to them over Hogan.
Larry Hogan has been an obstacle in the way of social movements fighting for progress. And when we compete, when we fight in the electoral arena at the same time that we fight in the streets and in all other arenas, that's when it adds into making advances in the movement.
Governor Hogan has also urged more cooperation between federal and local law enforcement over immigration. But critics say such policies continue to rip families apart.
I say, where was he when we were trying to pass the expansion of the Maryland Dream Act and getting scholarship for immigrant youth? And where was he when we were trying to pass the Trust Act?
The Trust Act, which Hogan opposed, would have limited cooperation between federal and local authorities. Jealous says he does support the measure. Many also acknowledge that policies enacted by the George Bush and Obama administrations created the institutions like family detention that Trump was able to harness to fulfill his zero-tolerance policies, but that the new wave of protests can be educational for those who have not been previously involved in the immigration debate. The Real News will keep following this story.
Okay, so, lots of critical issues in this coming election. Really important that people turn out and get their voices heard. As you heard in the piece, Governor Hogan was elected at a time when there was really low voter turnout. And I think people just took for granted that there would be a Democratic governor elected in Anthony Brown. And now we have Ben Jealous. Well, both of them are saying that they don't support the dismantling of ICE.
Yeah. And I think that's what's making this race the most interesting is that Hogan is a Republican, and he does some Republican stuff, but he doesn't do everything. He doesn't walk lock and step with
the party.
And on this, it's an interesting debate to watch, not just because of that fact, but Maryland over the past, I'd say 10, 20 years, our immigration population has grown, and nobody really talks about that. But like,
even in Baltimore City schools, the fastest growing population are new Americans. And Spanish-speaking children. So, you know, when people talk about increasing enrollment in Baltimore City schools, they often aren't aware of that fact.
Right.
So,
So
yeah, again, this campaign is heating up already. We're already being inundated by television ads and radio ads from Larry Hogan. And as you said, you know, he doesn't fall lockstep with the Republican Party. His wife is an immigrant to this country. And so I think sometimes it may be hard for people seeking progressive policies, or maybe not as far as progressive, but just policies that work for them and their families. It's hard to tell how his policies might be impacting him. So we're going to do more reporting on that. You do a piece on Hogan and Jellis's transportation policies, and
and I got a lot of help from Eze Noor on this, because it's a lot more his beat. But it's interesting to see this debate happen right now, because we're talking about a new transportation system. Governor Hogan canceled the Red Line, and Ben Jealous is promising to come back with it. But a lot of the discussion is around where the money's going to come from, because there was a lot of money raised and put up for the Red Line, and some of that money went to the Purple Line, which serviced DC suburbs, and Baltimore City kind of got cut out of that. So it's a lot of different crazy things going on. I think this is going to be an interesting discussion to watch in terms of the different issues that will decide this race, and I think transportation is going to end up being one of them. So let's check this out. The purpose of the summit was to establish the framework for creating a regional transportation authority. The group aims to reinstate the Red Line. The event was co-hosted by Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition and the Baltimore County Green Party.
Fundamentally, you can count on me to take Larry Hogan's approach and flip it on its head. To say, no, we're not going to make the mistakes that Los Angeles made 50 years ago by widening highways. We're going to invest in trains. We're not simply going to look for the cheapest deal. We're going to look for the best deal. We're not going to privatize public transportation. We're going to make public transportation work.
Jealous is challenging Republican Governor Larry Hogan, who was not in attendance.
He also squandered the time of public servants and citizens across the region who had invested in making the Red Line almost a reality before he destroyed it. There's no getting around that. And what he's done is he's taken resources that had been intended to expand mass transit in our state and, quite frankly, used it for highways.
Hogan's tenure was marked by the cancellation of further funding of the Red Line, a $2.9 billion transit project that he called a boondoggle, and instead chose to fund highways in the suburbs. The Red Line would have served a 14-mile stretch from east to west Baltimore and would have served mostly African-American communities. The Hogan administration faced a civil rights complaint for axing the Red Line, but the Trump administration later dismissed the lawsuit.
That is why we filed a Title VI complaint. It had obvious race-based transit features, that decision. He took money from Baltimore and gave that money after he returned $900 million to the federal government. He used the balance of that $2.9 billion to build road and highway projects in rural areas of the state where his white constituents live in order to guarantee his re-election. That's why he's the second most popular governor in the country right now.
We reached out to Hogan's campaign and they said, quote, "The governor has offered a fiscally responsible plan to both enhance mass transit options and relieve traffic congestion on our highways, while also repairing our crumbling roads and bridges, including $3.8 billion in transportation investments for Baltimore City. But like most of Mengel's promises, he offers no realistic way to pay for his pie-in-the-sky ideas. However, Jealous certainly knows that they will require increased taxes or cuts to existing services. We, like the rest of Maryland, eagerly await the details. We asked Jealous for a response.
He would like for us to privatize our freeways, to create Cadillac lanes, and otherwise would like to basically repeat many of the mistakes that Los Angeles made half a century ago.
So yeah, like I said, I think I think this is going to be one of the deciding factors. We talked earlier about immigration.
Yeah.
I think just the whole, I think people are going to see a lot more, or look into a lot more of Hogan and how close he is with the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm. Because
one of the things, one of Jealous spokespeople was quoted in The Sun earlier this week as saying, we know that it's going to be hard to get federal money.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they already know that even if Jealous is elected,
mm-hmm.
it's going to be hard to get federal money under a Trump administration,
right.
especially if he's reelected. So,
right.
you know what I mean? That's going to be really interesting to watch. This next piece is from Marc Steiner. Mm-hmm. It's called If God Invented Baseball.
Yes, you wore the right shirt for this.
I know, right?
So this is a really captivating story for those of you who are baseball buffs. You hear from Ethelbert Miller about kind of his experiences growing up, and he uses poetry to tell the story of growing up through the changes of baseball and how racial justice, racial dynamics, economic justice was kind of woven into that. And it's interesting that he's able to do that through poetry and kind of paint the picture of what his life was like growing up in the Bronx. And
the Bronx is a baseball city.
Come on,
that's it. People don't know that, but my aunt has lived on the Grand Concourse since the early '80s.
Wow.
It's and she lives blocks away from Yankee Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you go there, you see how much baseball is a part of the culture.
The culture, yeah.
That's where the best Yankee hats are copped.
Get your fitted on the Grand Concourse.
Get your slick Yankee hats from right there.
Yeah, growing up, I'm from Brooklyn. So growing up, and at that time, there was no cable. So you playing out in the summertime, windows open. Mm-hmm. My abuela sending us out into the street to get out of the house, but you just hear the baseball games coming through either the television or the radio, and it does become a part of the fabric of your life, just like you hear a home run hit and the whole neighborhood stops. Mm-hmm. People come out of the sprinklers. Well, the sprinklers actually the fire hydrant, but I'm getting all bougie. We're getting all bougie.
Ghetto sprinklers.
We got out of the sprinklers.
It's the same thing. The fire hydrant is better. I like the fire hydrant better than sprinklers. Y'all can have y'all sprinklers. Crack that fire hydrant.
I'm good. I'm good. Yes, I'm good. Get that hydrant open. So yeah, let's take a listen. It's a dope piece.
I want to jump into some of the things because for me, a lot of this book really said so much about who we are as Americans. And there's a couple of poems here I want to try. One is let's start with The Boys of Summer.
Boys of Summer.
I'm going to maybe go from Boys of Summer, and I may slide into the trade. We'll wait for the trade. But let's go to The Boys of Summer.
Okay, in The Boys of Summer, you can see, in terms of what I just said earlier, I made reference to the Bill Mazeroski in the 1960 World Series, and that's in this poem. The Boys of Summer. Carlton, Patrick, and I are waiting for autographs outside Yankee Stadium. The summer of 1960, and Mazeroski has not hit the home run, which will break our hearts. We are years away from memories of our wives and our children. On this day, we see Mickey Mantle coming to work, his uniform of stripes waiting inside. We run to catch the Mick, to have him sign his name on whatever we own. Our lives sheltered from segregation. Our mothers talking about Jackie Robinson and how Willie Mays learned to catch a ball while turning his back, running full speed as if he was Emmett Till. Now, you could break this poem down, one of The Boys of Summer, in terms of, baseball. That's the key part of the game. Carlton and Patrick were actually real people. They were the kids, my friends in the St. Mary's Housing Project. We would go to the games and we would stand outside Yankee Stadium waiting for the Yankees to go in, and we have our gloves or whatever to get autographs. During our entire childhood, the only person who was really nice to us was Jim Bouton, who wrote Ball 4, but Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle, Bill Scarron, they played the way they were when they were entering the ball. There was a certain arrogance and certain like that. My mother, not a baseball fan, but a black person, she's a Jackie Robinson person, okay? And that's why when you talk about baseball, she was not a baseball, but Jackie Robinson was a person,
right.
and that's very important. So that's in this poem. And what I'm looking at is childhood memories, how we grow up, and things that we don't know. I didn't know about Emmett Till, okay? But I'd like to connect to the whole thing.
You didn't know about Emmett Till when you were a kid?
I didn't know about Emmett Till until probably at Howard, you know?
Really?
Probably. And the reason for that, you keep in mind, is that Emmett Till's mother's decision to have an open coffin, which I think appeared in Jet magazine and things of that sort, okay? Reason why that's not part of my background is that my family's not from the South. Okay, my father's born in Panama. Basically, my roots are from Barbados. Okay, so if you look at in my house in the South Bronx, and one person that did this, if you would talk to my mother, especially on the phone, my mother sounded Jewish. You know, basically, you know, if you were to bring members of my family in, even to today, they talk completely different from me because they lived in Brooklyn, in a small enclave, and so they have West Indian accents. Okay, we were one of the few families when we were in the Bronx. The neighborhood was primarily Jewish. I wouldn't only research if I find out later in terms of how my family got there, but that has a lot to do in terms of how you are shaped in terms of your development. Things that you know, things you don't know. But that's what I try to get at in this poem. My family had a certain way of looking at sports that was different from mine.
And it's funny because as a reader, reading that poem, my mind immediately went to boys of the summer in the Bronx or wherever that was, playing ball, and how Emmett Till was a boy in the summer.
Sure.
When they killed
Money,
him.
Mississippi.
Right.
Right.
When he went to visit family,
Right.
that was his summer.
Sure. Yeah.
Away from Chicago
Right.
in Mississippi.
Right.
Well,
See,
a lot of kids went to, the people sent them down to South to spend the summer with their relatives.
Right. You know, that's interesting. You know, and this is the beauty of poetry, that you as a reader bring that, you know, to the poem. You know, to me, you know, there's a picture of Emmett Till. I think he's wearing a hat. Yeah. You know, with like brim.
A fedora.
Fedora, right,
Fedora,
right. You know, and so you know that ties in with Willie Mays losing his cap. You know, and so those are things that I think when you break the poem down, you know, from the Boys of Summer, what you're saying, to you know my friends, and then tying that to Emmett Till. And point I didn't mention, my mother never permitted Johnson publications into the house. She thought they were trash. So really? Yeah, so I grew up.
No Ebony, no Jet.
Oh, she's keep in mind, Jet magazine had a little
the center.
The center, right. So just
the woman in the bikini, the bathing suit.
Just a bikini to my mother. You see, because the key thing about baseball, the way I grew up, you could not touch a ball on a Sunday. Okay, you could not touch the ball on Sunday.
No playing baseball on Sunday.
No, not even looking at the ball on Sunday. and what happened? Usually on a Sunday, my grandfather would come to the house. Okay, and I realized, okay, this is how strict they were. Okay, and if I went out to Brooklyn, and we took the tram to Brooklyn to spend a Sunday with our family, our aunts and uncles and cousins.
This is the Panamanian side, the Barbadian side?
This is the Barbadian side. This is like my mother's family. Right. They were beyond strict. You see, this is why I used to tell my kids, you know, when I raised my kids, we go to the park, I say, we want to see the West Indian kids? They sit like this at the park so they don't mess up their Sunday clothes, you know. And what happened back then, you know, you couldn't go out to play. You know, and I look at it now in a funny way. That might have saved me. You know, there was no running in the streets. You know, me and my brother and my sister, we would look out at the other kids playing. You know, this might have had a reason why my brother went into the monastery and then as opposed to other people. You know, you might say, well, I'm up here by myself. I might as well.
Your brother became a monk?
My brother. Well, while you have the civil rights movement going on.
Yeah.
Same time, my brother integrated the Genesis Monastery upstate New York, you know, where they make the monk's bread and everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, I go back and I realize how important that was, you know, and what that meant for my family, you know, for my mother and my father to accept that they would not see their son again. You know, I'm just amazed how that went over, okay? And that's why I'm out playing baseball, okay? And I do recall, you know, coming back in the house and my mother crying, stuff like that, and my sister telling me to be quiet because I'm young. I didn't know what's going on. You see, you know, and I write one of my poems where we go out to LaGuardia Airport, and that was great because what black people went to the airport. You know, I mean, we were like bus drivers, Greyhound at best. And to go out, and that's when you could actually go out to the bell and wave at people. They could wave
you
at
walk outside on the deck.
Exactly, right, and wave. You know, like Casablanca, you know what I'm saying? You know, by Richard, we always have the Bronx. Right. And, you know, what happens is that you're young and stuff like that. And I think for me, you know, writing this book, it's draw upon some of the baseball memories, but there are other memories that have appeared, you know, not in poetry, but appeared in my memoirs.
Marc is a dope dude. I just found out that he taught at my high school, and the last year that he was teaching there was the year before I would have had him. And he was replaced by Maria Broom.
Wow.
Who is well-known
Also
person
amazing.
here in Baltimore. Amazing actress. She was on The Wire. But this was a great conversation.
It's always nice to take a look into someone's life through art.
Yeah.
You know, and their ability to tell a story that resonates with many types of people. So.
Yeah, I was just telling somebody last night, and I tell people this all the time. Artists, the main responsibility of artists is to articulate the human experience from whatever perspective or angle or whatever you're doing it. We're all. And that's why people love art so much. That's why they love going to galleries and poetry readings and concerts and all that, because for that moment you are listening to someone else articulate life in a way that you otherwise might not have. And so I think that's a beautiful piece that he did that. This next piece, cop shortage called into question. Can we talk about the police? We always talk about the police on here. We are not shy about talking about the police.
Nah.
Cop shortage called into question. What's up with this piece?
You know, so last week we did an early report on this as well, where you had the Baltimore City Council's budget hearings, and you saw council members getting really frustrated about
42,
47, something like that, $1 million in overtime.
Yeah.
This story goes a little bit deeper into it. Stephen Janis and Taya Graham interview Ryan Dorsey, and you know, Ryan, as a city councilman, has been able to get some documentation from Baltimore City Police Department about the huge gap between the number of police they say are necessary to patrol, the number of police they have, and the number of people assigned to patrol.
Yeah.
And so they keep lifting up this argument that they don't have enough police, and that's what the issue is with crime. But if you're paying all this overtime, and I think he said something like you get into half the year or a quarter of the year and you're already millions of dollars over in overtime budget. Where they do that? You know, who else can run an institution where it's like, we're just going to, you know, we're going to make it rain, and then, you know, they'll give us more money.
It's like, never mind the fact that homicides are not getting solved. Never mind the fact that homicides are not going down. Never mind the fact that crime is not going down.
Right.
Like, let's just keep giving money to the police. Like, they're the police. We need
with no accountability is the issue.
Yeah,
with
no accountability whatsoever.
So if you have this you know, budget shortfall, and you're going over budget at this volume, you know, all streets should be clean. There should be no dope dealing. Everybody should have a green lawn, and you know, no vacants. Like, the world
People should be scared.
It's a utopia.
To jump out of their car,
right,
and lick shots and murder a 7-year-old girl.
Hello.
Rest in peace to Taylor.
Yep.
Who,
you know,
just died this week after battling for a couple weeks, fighting for a couple weeks, being hit by a bullet that wasn't intended for her.
Right.
They don't know who did it. Nobody knows what's going on.
Right.
I'm like, but you can catch every red light. You can catch every person running a red light. You got cameras out here.
You got cameers for that. That's
that's
not even the police.
Right.
So where's the money going?
Where's the money going? What are they doing?
Let's go ahead and take a look at this. Take a look, and
because I'm about to get mad.
Yeah.
This is Stephen Janice reporting for the Real News Network in Baltimore City, Maryland. Policing and money are a volatile mix, and nowhere is that more evident in Baltimore, where a conflict over overtime has spread to City Hall. For years, the Baltimore Police Department has justified spending tens of millions of dollars on overtime due to a shortage of patrol officers. It's extra funds on top of a steep, already $500 million budget. Spending that means 1 out of every $4 goes to police, while the city underfunds affordable housing, schools, and summer youth jobs. That includes a recent $21 million supplemental spending bill to compensate for excess overtime spending that sucked up all the additional tax revenues for the past fiscal year.
You know, and if we as a council don't intervene, we've really created a culture where the police department has become accustomed to exceeding their budget and then coming and asking for additional money for overtime.
But now a key city councilman is calling that narrative of inadequate staffing into question.
Eventually, if I just keep asking for this stuff, I'm going to have the records right there in front of me.
Baltimore City Councilman Ryan Dorsey was skeptical of the idea that overtime was a result of a shortage of officers.
I mean, I'm very clearly here challenging this scarcity myth that there aren't enough officers.
Which is why he asked for these documents he shared with the Real News that reveal a huge gap between the number of officers on the city payroll who are supposed to work patrol and the number of officers actually who are assigned to the streets every day.
I'll say it again, that budget has 1,725 officers, sergeants, and lieutenants budgeted, at least 1,525 of whom are staffed. So they've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds more budgeted and staffed than what they need for this specific purpose of staffing the patrol shift schedule.
The documents show in detail each shift through the city's 9 police districts. So the Real News analyzed the numbers, and we found that out of the 1,700 budgeted positions for patrol, only roughly 900 officers and supervisors are assigned to work patrol weekly.
Police apologists and boosters, claim that we're talking about heroes, and that the backbone of a police department is patrol and all of that. We have to recognize that there's a very clearly established culture where working patrol is a highly undesirable assignment.
Which raises the question, where are the rest? Dorsey says that's a question he has posed to the department.
Any and all necessary information, whatever they need to provide me in order to account for the whereabouts and assignment and status of every one of those 1,725 positions.
A problem he thinks is tied to a culture inside the agency that ignores patrol. But we wanted answers to Dorsey's questions, so we went directly to the top. We tried to ask Mayor Catherine Pugh at a press conference at City Hall. First, she told us to wait.
Can we finish this? Any questions as it relates to this?
Thank you.
Okay, can we finish, please?
And then she wouldn't answer the question, but told us instead to ask the police department.
Officers budget and only 800 assigned any given day.
Well, let me just say this. We froze police positions in this city long before I came here. 2 years of freezing police positions. So police positions have been frozen. I unfroze police positions in this city. So I invite you all to come to the Violence Reduction Initiative, talk to the police commissioner. He has all the numbers.
So your reaction to the video that the commissioner released yesterday?
Which we did in this email, and have yet to hear back. The questions about staffing come as the council has vowed to crack down on overtime.
10, 15 years I've been on this council. We've been talking about police overtime. I mean, it's like they have an open checkbook.
Last week, the Real News reported on a proposal by Councilman Leon Pinkett to force the department to report overtime spending monthly.
Some people will ask, well, why are we doing this and why is it necessary? When we look at last year's fiscal budget, even prior before it got to the council by our first quarter milestone, the police department was already $17 million in a deficit as it relates to overtime.
His idea, a sign of frustration with the agency that garners the biggest share of the city's budget, roughly $500 million, but yet can't rein in spending.
And we need someone that can manage that budget and have it inside of finance, where the finance people can set their budget and make them live within their means like every other agency.
For now, Dorsey says he will continue to press for answers, even if it's unclear that anyone at City Hall is listening.
If you don't get what you want, how are you going to vote on this $21 million appropriation?
I'm not voting to support that $21 billion appropriation under any circumstances.
This is Stephen Janice and Taya Graham reporting for the Real News Network in Baltimore City, Maryland.
Yo, it's wild. You know, it's important for us to keep lifting up these stories. I mean, we joked a little bit about, you know, talking about the police all the time. But when you have a community or a city that lives in a police state, or at least a part of the city living in a police state, and you have some parts of the media lifting up crime as if the people in community are pathologically sick or problems to be solved. You have another segment of the community pointing its finger and surrounding counties saying, our kids can't go on field trips down there. It's so those people are so violent. Those people are a problem. There's no way to solve the problems, right? Because you are crafting a story that says the police have done nothing wrong. The police are above reproach. The police have free reign to do whatever they like and have no accountability. And that's a challenge when you have the mayor saying, I don't know the numbers, go talk to the police commissioner. And then you have the police saying, we need more police, just believe us. And then you have a city council president saying, I've been on city council for 15 years and this has been a problem. Word? Year 5, you didn't want to, you ain't want to do something about it in year 5 or year 10. So, you know, we have to ask the deeper questions and, you know.
So the narrative, and Paul J talks about this a lot, it's like the narrative is like, oh, the police are here to protect and serve. But in all actuality, police are here to only protect the rich and their property. So for them, the narrative is like, oh, they're in the city wilding out. Like you said, we don't want our kids going on the trips. We don't want them down there in Baltimore City. But at the end of the day, the police are just taking advantage of that fear. That fear that everybody has is that that's who you call. Even, and it's the crazy thing is, it's even in communities of poverty.
Right. Like,
yeah,
I was going to say, you know, I don't even know how intentional as it is much haphazard, right? Like, I don't think there's some nefarious group of people in the background like, we are about to crack some heads in, you know, East Baltimore and Southeast Baltimore. No, it's like, this is the way we've done it. Nobody's going to put a check on us. I want to do this the easiest way possible, not a way that works for all people. And I am the first to attest that, you know, there are people who pursue police work in their mind to serve community. And I think what happens is you get into this environment or this institution that was not set up for that. And I think that's the tension that people have between good police and, you know, there are good police and those others are the bad apples. When it's like, no, the system is a rotten apple. And there are good people who try to work their way through it and they end up coming out tainted themselves in some ways.
So, I mean, and that's kind of the culture of militarism. You know what I mean? It's like, because if you look at going into the military, it's kind of the same thing. Like, most people go into the military and they think, well, I'm gonna serve my country. You know, I'm gonna get some money for college. You know what I mean? But they're not. But then you don't really look, when you look deeper and go, well, oh yeah, I'm going to go in here and like rape and pillage these countries and, you know, go into these places and kill women and children, you know, and nobody's going to do anything about it because the fear factor fuels the support for those institutions. And it's like that with the police. It's like, if I'm wealthy, you know, and I'm removed from poverty, you know, and it's like, okay, well, my tax dollars are going to the police. Y'all doing your thing? Okay, keep doing your thing. Keep giving them those tax dollars. Keep giving them that overtime. Keep giving them whatever they need to keep these people away from my property.
It's the fear of a black planet.
Yeah.
You know?
Come on, Public Enemy.
Listen.
Let's go.
Come on. Listen, got to bring the hip hop back in somewhere. that was a nice little nugget for people who pay attention.
Yes.
All right. Well, you know, again, as this last conversation lifted up, if you want some real independent news, make sure you're supporting the Real News Network. You can donate at therealnews.com/donate. You know, put a little coin where your freedom is. And make sure we're able to continue to bring you stories like the ones in today's podcast and continue to bring real news for the people by the people.
Like we said earlier, if you're around Baltimore this weekend, it's Artscape Weekend. Artscape is the longest running free festival of art in the country. And there's a lot of dope stuff going on. I think TLC is headlining tonight. Well,
TNC.
It'd be TC. 'Cause I gotta go host my after party, so I don't get to see like who's going to do the Left Eye parts.
They keep
but
trying
I can't
to
wait to
inject
hear.
people, but
I can't wait to hear who they have doing the Left Eye parts.
It's
but
all good. Rest in
everybody's
peace,
hyped
Left
for that.
Eye.
Rest in peace, Left Eye. But there's great stuff going on all weekend. DJ Class will be here Saturday night. All kind of stuff, fun, food, music, everything you want. So if you're in the area, go to Artscape and check out the piece I have next week. And yeah, keep rocking with us. Thank y'all.
You feel me? Making music change the game. Watch me flex. You feel me? Cool nigga, women wanna see him flop. You feel me? Make it big and get my niggas off the block. You feel me? And I say all I ever wanted was some cash quick. Used to throw my middle fingers up to those who had it. Young boy, gun pull, doing bad shit. Show enough. I am the baddest. I mastered this rap shit. I got this crack dish on every track, kid. I had it, I never lost it. My hands is magnets. You salty, you Michael Jackson. You moving backwards. We rumble down in the jungle. Jumanji tactics. I'm spazzing, I'm fucking spazzing. In the middle of the track, I'm rare. Grabbed it and then I smashed it. Leave him sitting in the trunk like spaz. Couldn't kill a nigga like George Zimmerman, cinnamon. And you niggas are sweeter than cinnamon, but my sentence is the shoes. Or better yet, I'm serving up the sauce. You put me on a track, I kill it all. I'm a god. Don't be tripping if you ain't try to fight the war. Guns to get the sparking better. Hide on the floor, helicopter chopper hanging outside the door. That shit making all kinds of noise. That go through that shit. Don't get caught inside the door. Do not beef with me if it's not worth dying for. Beef, I beast, I beat and let it lie on the floor. Bullets big enough to hunt a Tyrannosaurus. All I ever wanted was some cash quick. Used to throw my middle fingers up to those who had.